Hi everyone, welcome to the Warwick Classics Network video on the Ancient Greek Symposium. Now we wanted to share with you today something that we do with all our first year students, in that we get them to come into our replica symposium space, our replica Andron of the Ancient Greek house, and we get out our replica drinking ware and we recreate the symposium to understand how these vessels and the images that are on them would have been seen, interpreted and understood. So let's get started. So you're leaning on left arm, left arms, left arms, left arms.
I'm really
Like kind of, and feel, come on, this is the lazy. Come on, this is the kind of feet, we have to get hands and feet up as much as we can. Kind of, as with the couches, this is the kind of thing we want to see. Right, okay, this is better. Okay, how do you guys feel? Uncomfortable. Yeah, we don't do this today, do we? Right? You kind of sit in a chair, you sit upright. Okay, we're not used to reclining in this position, but you have to imagine you'd be more adapted to this. So we have to think about the Ancient Greek Symposium as being full of different types of vessels that were used for very particular purposes. Now, too often today we talk about Greek vases, and that kind of, I think, makes us think about, you know, a vase that we put up on a mantelpiece with some flowers in it. We have to get away from that. We have to think about different types of drinking ware instead. And there would have been different vessels with very specific purposes. So the biggest one was called the krater. And that was where you mixed the wine. Ancient Greek wine didn't come in a way that you could drink it straight out of a bottle. It came unmixed. So you took the unmixed wine and you mixed it with water in the big krater to create the wine that people then drank. So that allowed you to play with the strength of wine. So you could mix it 1 part wine to 3 parts water, or if you wanted something with a bit more kick, 2 parts wine to 3 parts water, etc. So you had the krater, that was your main vessel, the centerpiece, if you like, of the symposium. But you had to get your unmixed wine and your water to the krater, so you needed specific vessels for those as well. And for the unmixed wine, you used an amphora, and for the water, you used a vessel called a hydria, and they all had different shapes, so you could instantaneously recognize which was which. Yeah. Hydria, the hydria, yeah, the water, kind of the very Greek word for water, hydria, right, okay? The hydria is what you use to bring the water in, absolutely, okay? What about the unmixed wine? Yeah? An amphora, right, so the amphoras are for the unmixed wine, hydrias are for the water, and so you got your mixed wine in the krater. How do you then get it to your drinking cup? You needed another type of vessel that was known as an oinokoe, a wine jug. It comes neat and you have to mix it with water, and the krater is the place that you mix the wine and water together. Okay. But I'm not going to carry that krater around and try and pour that into individual cups. So I need another vessel to take from the krater, the mixed wine, to go round and pour into individual cups, neatly displayed by this modern jug. But on that list would be the oinokoe, right, coming up here this side, the wine jug. And that would be what the servants, the slaves, then took around the symposium space to serve into individual people's drinking cups, and those are the Kylikes. Here, this is the Kylix, this is the ancient Greek drinking cup. More on this in a second. But there are other special types of vessels that you don't see so often, but they're just as interesting. One was called a Psykter. Now this is a vessel that you use to cool wine. You'd put the wine you wanted to cool inside it, and then you'd put the Psykter bobbing in a much larger krater full of cold water. So it would bob up and down, and it too would have images on it, and that's how you would cool your wine. So you can imagine perhaps several kraters kind of at the event, some with the mixed wine ready to go in the oinokoe to the glasses, some perhaps being dedicated to cooling the wine, right? And you have these vessels that bounce around. And what we found before is that if you put this vessel empty into the water, it just topples over. Actually, you have to put some wine in the bottom of it to give it the gravitational pull to not then topple over. Right? So you can see if this is balancing in the water, it's filled with wine, it's chilling. Okay, we've got our wine on chill, we're ready to go. So now you've got your drinking party set and you are ready to come to the symposium. All of this would have been decided by the Symposiarch, the guy who was leading the symposium. Whose symposium it was, it might be because it's in his home, or it might have been that he was chosen through a kind of competition if the symposium was happening, in, say, in a dining room in a sanctuary. The Symposiarch was the man who decided what kind of vessels were going to be used, so might go and buy a new set of vessels with particular images on them to be used in a particular symposium, or they might have family heirlooms that they like to bring out, or the fine dining set, if you like, for a particular occasion. He was also the person who would decide how strong the wine was going to be, and also how many kraters of wine you would be drinking that night. And we have a famous quote by playwright Eubulus, who says that really 3 kraters was where sensible men stopped. You drank 3 kraters of wine at a symposium, and that was good, and after that you go home. But if you stay, then he counted out what happens on the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and if you managed to get to the 10th krater, well, that was for unconsciousness. You have gone out and bought, possibly, or at least decided which vessels are going to be used by your guests at your symposium. Right? You have picked, potentially, the images that are going to be on display. You choose how strong our wine is going to be. How strong is our wine going to be?
Pretty strong.
Pretty strong. Okay. Once we hear that decision, we know what kind of night this is going to be. Right? Immediately, the Symposiarch sets the tone for the event. Right? So you're going 2 parts wine to 3 parts water. All right. Okay. Good luck to you all. Right? We have here, and then once we decide how strong the wine is going to be, you've got a second decision to make, which is how many kraters of wine are we going to get through in this symposium?
5.
5. Okay. Eubulus, fragment from the 4th century BC. For sensible men, I prepare only 3 kraters. 1 for health, which they drink first, the 2nd for love and pleasure, the 3rd for sleep. After the 3rd one is drained, wise men go home, but we are not. Right? The 4th krater is not mine anymore, it belongs to bad behaviour. The 5th is for shouting, that's where we're going. The 6th is for rudeness and insults. The 7th is for fights. The 8th is for breaking the furniture. The 9th is for depression. The 10th is for madness and unconsciousness. So I guess we have to be thankful you didn't go for 10. Right? And we have to think about the symposium as being, it's an event, but it's on a spectrum. If you read the texts set in the symposium, Plato's Symposium, they have highfalutin philosophical discussions about the nature of love or about the issues that they're most proud of. They're drinking, to be sure, but there is a very kind of high-end cultural nature. All the way through to a symposium, sort of one that this one kind of organises, it seems, on a regular basis, kind of where we're going to get to shouting, right, or where it's going to descend into much more of kind of what we might have in our mind from a Roman orgy, right, depending on the entertainment that you have chosen also to be here. Have we just got musicians? Have we got courtesans? Right? It's all up to you. So the moment you walk into this space and you see what the Symposiarch has decided for you, you get a sense of the event, right? The nature of the event that is about to unfold. So, we know what kind of night we're in for. The Symposiarch has decided kind of on the strength of our wine and kind of how many kraters we're going to be drinking. Who is here around us? Well, this is for Greek male citizens, adult citizens. These are the only sorts of people that are going to be sitting, or rather reclining, around this space. You have to imagine in the normal sort of sized dining room somewhere between 7 to 9 couches, and normally there were 2 people on each couch, so we're talking somewhere 14 to 18, perhaps max 20 people at a symposium, a fairly intimate gathering. But making people recline that way fundamentally changes the nature of the occasion. It's not like you go to the pub or to a cafe and you're all sitting at chairs kind of with a table, kind of where half of you or more than half of you is hidden below the table. The whole of your body is exposed and on display to everyone else. You are in a square, you are seated on these couches in a square, so you are forced to look at everyone else. And the nature of kind of how you're meant to lean on the left arm means that you're more encouraged to have a group conversation than you are to just talk to your neighbour. But it's much easier for you to all have a joint big conversation. Right? So this kind of setup is actually focusing you more on having a big joint conversation than on you having micro-private conversations. It's making this a public space. Right?
It's equally making a public space in that much more of you is on display. When you sit in the pub at a chair with a table, right, the world can see probably, what, a max half of you, normally less than half. Here, your entire body is on display to everyone else. You're also all at the same level.
So the very setup of the symposium is to encourage everyone to look at one another, to engage with one another, and to create the space both for philosophical discussion, convivial drinking, and, as we'll come to see, kind of very much the observation of whether others are up to the test of drinking at the symposium. Now what I'm holding here is a Kylix. This is the Greek drinking cup, and if you're thinking it looks very odd for a drinking cup, you'd be absolutely right, because it is indeed a very odd shape. And it gets even odder when you put yourself back into the position that people at the ancient Greek Symposium, the ancient Greek drinking party, had to adopt if they were a fully paid up citizen of the Greek world. And that wasn't sitting as I'm sitting now, that was reclining. So you had to get on your left elbow and put your legs up, and you'd be sharing your couch with somebody else, which left you with only one hand to be able to drink from this. Now, when we do this with the students here at Warwick University, we get them to hold it up and try and hold this thing with one hand, and it's incredibly heavy. This is a replica one I'm using, by the way, today. And then, of course, you've got the problem of how to drink from it. Now, I haven't got anything in this one, but I've got another one over here with some Ribena, to try in a second. But the moment you tilt it towards your lips, you realise how unstable this vessel is. And because of the very wide brim, it's very easy for the wine to just come tumbling out the other side and completely drown you. You have to drink with a huge degree of sensitivity and skill to stop wine pouring over yourself. And also, as you turn this vessel, because it's kind of not just a wide brim but very shallow, you get a lot of the liquid moving left, right, backwards, forwards, destabilising this vessel even further. Oh, we've sort of got it. Don't drop it.
Thanks, Michael. Crushed it.
People would have been more used to doing this, so put yourself back in the thing where you're doing this on a regular basis, but it's a really heavy thing to do.
Yeah.
What else did you feel?
I don't know, it's just awkward to like pick up, because you're so used to just grabbing a glass like by the middle bit. It's just an awkward process.
It's an awkward process to pick up, picking it up by the foot. And do you remember in the lecture last week I showed you that image of the drinking Kylix from the Ashmolean, where the foot was entirely replaced with a set of male genitalia, right? You get the joke that when you're having to hold the vessel like that, kind of ha 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 ha, the vessel's sort of playing a joke on you. How we interpret that is another matter. So it's difficult to hold, it's hard it's heavy to hold.
It's weird that like, it's like drinking out of a bowl as well, like, because it's so big. Normally a glass is however big.
It's fishbowl drinking,
yeah,
right? Kind of, isn't it, right?
No straws.
No straws.
So the question becomes, right, the ancient Greeks were extremely competent and clever. They could design and throw a cup in whatever shape they wanted. Why did they choose to do it like this? Why did they decide to make drinking difficult? And I think that question goes to the heart of how we need to understand ancient Greek culture. That this is at the symposium, this is the drinking party. This, we might imagine, is the place where everyone relaxed and was at ease, a bit like when we go for a drink down the pub kind of today. But actually the symposium was a place in which the Greeks were testing themselves, were there to demonstrate and put on display the fact that they knew how to drink, they knew how to be cultured, they could demonstrate, pass the test, if you like, of Greek civility.
That wide kind of brim, as opposed to the wine glasses or beer glasses or shot glasses of today, mean that when you tip, right, wine is coming at you across a wide section.
You'd defo spill it if it was more full, like you'd just be all down.
You'd be all down. So you have to exercise a lot of control and care to then get only wine to spill over the section where your mouth is, right, for it not to spill over you. And the other thing that's interesting about this is that, I don't know whether you felt this, that trying to tilt it, actually trying to control as you tilt.
Yeah, it's really hard to like balance it.
Yeah, because again, this is it's a shallow bottomed vessel, right? And what that means is that as you tilt, the wine is very quickly all going to end up on one corner. So the balancing of this is actually quite difficult. The wine is going to make it more and more difficult, as you have it fuller and fuller, a more and more difficult to balance vessel. Julie. We talked about the way that you are all on display to one another. Your bodies are on display. You're being encouraged into public conversation. You're being encouraged to just look at one another, right? And all of that then is leading to a moment where you have to do something which is intentionally, from the design of the vessel, made difficult to do. To prove, do you know how to drink? Are you able to leap over the barrier, the high bar of what is expected of the Greek citizen and their cultured kind of way of life? The symposium is a test.
And then we get to weird and wonderful images that were on these things. And for that, I'm going to take a second Greek Kylik replica that we've had here made, that we use with the students. Now this one is a personal favourite, and I'm sure you'll recognise it if I show you for a second the image, or at least you can see part of the image on the inside. It's that famous one by Exekias, with Dionysus in his ship at the centre, with dolphins all around him and the vines growing out of the top. More of that image in a minute, because first off, what have we got on the outside of this vessel? We've got a large pair of eyes staring straight at you. And when I go to drink from this, if you'll excuse me, I won't lie down, I'll just stand up, but if I go to drink from this, well, the eyes start to take over my face. They become the eyes, the face that I show to everyone else around me in the symposium. So this cup is, if you like, it's a bit of a joke, or rather it's reminding you that you are being watched, that this is a test. This is not relax time. This is where you prove yourself worthy of being part of this unit. The eyes on the cup reminding you that you are always being observed.
It's nice and slow. What are you guys seeing on this side of the room? The eyes. The eyes. Right. The outside of the vessel is decorated with eyes, as are, kind of we see up here on the image as well. And what are the eyes doing while she drinks? They're taking over her eyes.
And then the other thing I think that's really important when we get hold of these vessels and actually start to use them in the position, kind of in the setup of the symposium, is that we are not fundamentally looking at these images as we do when they're printed in books. We don't get as much time as we like to look at an image and study it in minute detail. What we're getting are flashes, moments, and when I tilt my cup up to drink, and then down again, the image is gone from your sight. And equally, if you're sitting in front of me as you are, you get to see a particular image, but if people are sitting to the left of me, they'd see it differently, and to the right of me differently again. We get to see these images in fragments, in snapshots, rather than being able to pore over them at length. And everyone is seeing something different.
Focus outside the eyes. What else can you see?
Warriors and someone dying.
Warriors and someone dying. Okay, from your perspective, over here, right, you can see warriors, and you actually get a really good view of the person dying, don't you? Kind of underneath the handle, right? And indeed, the warrior's picked out in white, making that kind of quite a focus of attention for you. So we're moving on now to think about how you actually got a chance to engage with these images in real time in the symposium. So where you're sitting in the symposium is going to dramatically change the nature of the image you're seeing.
And I think the same applies in some ways to the image that's on the inside. Because again, we're so used to looking at this image as if it was just a perfect, flat 2D image, not the inside of a cup. Its purpose was to fill with wine. Now we've sort of maybe a third filled it with Ribena here, and we might expect that ancient Greek wine was even more opaque. So we may not be able to see anything of the image underneath the wine until we drink it. Instead, we're just getting the bits around the edge. We're getting some dolphins, we're getting some bits of the vines. So we're getting some senses of this image, but we're having to interpret it from the outside in, rather than from the centre of the image, which is how we naturally kind of look to think about images. We're seeing dolphins jumping out of the wine-dark sea of our wine in the cup, and it's only as we tilt it to drink from it again, excuse me while I take another sip, that more of the image is revealed to us. We start to see some, I can do a little bit for you here without trying not to spill too much, we start to see some of the sail of Dionysus' ship, but it's only when we finish the drink entirely that the whole image will be revealed to us. So again, we need to think about these images as being slowly revealed to us over time as we see them bit by bit by bit by bit, rather than just being able to observe them as a whole at leisure as we do in books today. Go wild.
Have a drink. Just a normal sip. So we're interested now about the image that's inside the vessel. What can we see? Dolphins. You can see the dolphins, right? The glass is what? About half? The Kylix is about half full? Something like that?
Vines, yeah.
So you can see the vines, you can see the dolphins. Okay. So kind of depending on how full this Kylikes is, you're going to be able to see more or less of the image, right? And particularly, how does the fact that this is wine, liquid, play with and interact with the nature of the image, the actual scene that's being depicted?
Because, like, dolphins are in the sea. So.
Dolphins are in the sea, yeah. The wine dark sea of Homer, right? Kind of whatever it might be. Or the wine of Dionysus that the vines are growing out of, right? We can't see... What can't we see at the moment?
The bottom.
Can't see the bottom. So you can't see... That's the image as you see it in a book. Again, you immediately get it's Dionysus. But here, actually, when it's filled with wine, you can't look from the centre outwards. You can't see the story as a whole. You might do before your cup is filled. Right? But once it's full, you actually have to think about interpreting the image from the outside in. Okay, what more did we see as you went to drink? What more did you see?
Like, tipping it revealed like more of the boat.
Okay.
I don't think it revealed all of it, but like you could see there was something else underneath it.
Okay, so you got the end of a boat. Did people get that? That kind of thing. So what is the way this is actually working, encouraging you to do?
Well, I'd like to drink all of it to find out what is actually at the bottom.
Yeah. Actually, to reveal the image, you're being encouraged to drink. Right? You're being encouraged to imbibe the wine of Dionysus to reveal the image. It goes on. So go for it a little bit more. Enjoy your rugby.
It's really difficult. Again, you just like see more of the boat, and also the more you drink it gets actually easier to drink because there's less liquid in it.
So it gets easier to drink the less liquid that's in it. You're obviously getting drunker.
Yeah.
Kind of as you're revealing the god of Dionysus, the god of wine, the god of the Symposium. Or you start to see perhaps the horn, the rhyton, the drinking horn that he was holding. Kind of, but as you down it, as you say, you would finally get Dionysus revealed. And then the story. Does anyone know the story that this image is depicting?
He turned a lot of pirates into dolphins.
Absolutely.
I think they kidnapped him.
Yeah. How much do we sort of think of these things as art with a capital A, with great painters where you're like, have you seen my Exekias that I've got up on the wall over here? Kind of, or frankly, do you use that once and chuck it away, next time go and buy another set? It was only the person who had it in gold and silver vessels that really didn't chuck their stuff away and perhaps kept that away for the finest event. Or if we're in southern Italy and Sicily, we know people assume to be buried with this stuff. And there are some examples that have survived where they've clearly gone through repair in antiquity. So they've become heirlooms that have actually been handed down through the generations. You know, this was your grandfather's drinking Kylix or whatever. So yes, there probably was some variety of use and some ways in which they became special implements that held special significance. And perhaps some people did appreciate that it was an Exekias, and others who were like, whatever. Right? And this is the kind of infamous images that we were looking at last time, right? Kind of thing. You can see them. There you go. There's the 2D photo you get given kind of when you see this stuff in books, and here's the image. Right? But this is how we would actually be using this vessel. So how does that change the way that we see and engage with the image? Kind of, if you only think about these things as 2D static images, right? And we didn't realise this until we actually did this demonstration the first time around, that there's something to do with fluid dynamics that I haven't kind of worked out yet. I'm just going to talk to a scientist. But when you put that in a bucket with water in it, it spins. It's not an image, it's a moving image. Right?
the way it's kind of, there's an ongoing story, isn't there? When you tell this around, there's no clear dividing scenes. On a Kylix, there's often a clear divide underneath the handles between kind of one story on one side and one story on another side. Whereas that image has no dividing scenes on it. It's a continuous narrative. And actually, when you start to see it now, like this, as a moving image, there's almost kind of early cinematography, if you like.
And I think the final thing to kind of comment is this. Lots of people write about how we should interpret an image on one of these drinking Kylikes and what it means. But the Symposium was a cultural event that could actually range across a huge spectrum. The Symposiarch, the leader of the Symposium, could decide at the outset that the wine was going to be very strong and that lots of kraters of wine were going to be drunk, that around the people at the Symposium would be not just musicians and flute players, but perhaps high-class courtesans, hetairai. It was going to be that kind of evening, not, on the other end of the spectrum, an evening where the Symposiarch had decided that it would be very mild wine, that only 1 or 2 or 3 kraters were going to be drunk, and where the main focus was going to be a discussion of philosophy. So coming to a symposium in the ancient Greek world could mean one of any number of things, depending on where the particular symposium you were attending sat on the spectrum. Is it going to be a night of very, very highfalutin educational philosophical talk with a little bit of wine on the side, or is it going to be a night of utter debauchery? And depending on where it sat on that spectrum, you would, I think, see these images in very, very different ways. On another favourite of mine, on the inside of a Kylix like this, is an image of someone puking their guts out. Now, how do we understand that? We've just downed our glass of wine, our Kylix of wine, and we see an image of someone being sick. Now, if we were at a symposium where it was all out debauchery, we might see that as an image of kind of where we should be by the end of the evening, what was expected of us, what was wanted of us by our cheerful symposium leader. But if we were at a symposium where actually it was all about talking about philosophy and not really drinking very much, and we got that kind of image, we might choose instead to interpret it as a warning about what is not civilized, acceptable behavior. So we have to remember that the meaning of any image is multiple, not just in the sense that different people around us will be seeing different parts of that image, perhaps interpreting it differently. Different people come with different experiences to an image and thus often understand it differently. But actually the very nature, the very particular symposium that we're attending would also be encouraging us to think about these images differently as well. Cheers.